So number 5 on our list takes us to the simulation nodes. And they're useful in lots of different ways, but they're particularly useful for things like what-if analysis. Let's take a look at them now. So the first simulation node that we encounter is the simulation generation node. And we find that in the source nodes here. So it's just one of these circular nodes. And it's really useful because it allows us to create simulated data. But it allows us to do it in a very particular way. You notice here I've created some fields already. If I hit preview, you can see the simulated data that's been created here. This is the first 10 records that's been shown. And we have things like the distribution properties, which we can add in ourselves. We can set the minimum maximum. We can tell it whether it's an integer, a real number, or even string if we wanted. If I wanted to add in another field here, let's pretend it's something like a test score that these people have taken. So let's just change that to the field test score. And I can go in here and say, well, let's give it some distribution properties, and I could choose a particular distribution. So I could say, okay, let's go for a normal distribution. I'll give them a mean of 62 and a standard deviation of 18, and I'll even specify a minimum maximum. Notice it immediately creates a distribution for us here, so we can say reject values below 0 and a maximum of 100. Click OK. Now we hit preview, and we have these test scores which are being shown here. Again, we might want to change these to integers, so just turn them into integer values, and we can even control the correlation between this field and other fields. I've already created some correlations here already, but for example, let's say I wanted to say there's a strong correlation between age and people's test scores. I could click in here and say, okay, well, there's a correlation of 0.55 there. And it immediately creates this correlation between age and test score, and I could say this test score between spend and there's a correlation between test score and spend, so it says 0.32, and then OK. And then advanced options tells us how many cases we can create, etc., etc. It's really powerful. Hit types here, it'll now create this data set for us just as if it's in an ordinary data set, and we can connect that up to a table. And there we go, and it goes and creates an ordinary data set for us of 100,000 simulated records. Now that's quite useful. There's another way we can use the simulation nodes. There's another simulation node that we can work with. If we go down here to the output, we have something called the SimFit procedure. So here I've already got some data. This is sales data, and if I hit run here, it runs the sales data. Here's some data that we've got, referring to advertising spend and consumer confidence index and the number of agents available in a store, traffic values and sales of a store. And if I wanted to actually simulate that data, I could use the SimFit procedure here, which I can connect up to it, and I just run it, and it creates for me a little SimGen node just like we saw earlier on, but it's completely simulated data. So it's very useful if you needed to send somebody some data, if you got some issue, or you wanted them to play around with something, but you wanted to keep it anonymous. You have an anonymize procedure within Modeler, but perhaps an even safer way to do that is to use something like SimFit, and it will create simulated versions of that data. But here you can see it's actually taking account of the distributions. So we've got normal distribution here, a widal distribution, a log normal distribution. It's tried to fit it appropriately. It's showing us the correlations between the fields, etc., etc. So this is very powerful because here it's created simulated data for us. Okay, simulated data. This is entirely fictional data, but it's been based on a fitting that we've done of the sales data. But we can take this even further and use SimEval here to do what-if analysis. So I'm just going to jump to an example where we show this, and I've got a specific video that looks at this on our website, which is the what-if analysis video. But let's just have a quick look at the SimEval. Okay, so this is where the simulation nodes really come into their own when you use all three together. We've got some data here, and it refers to sales data. I'll just give you a quick preview of it. So each row represents a different store. We've got an advertising budget, we've got consumer confidence index, we've got agents, traffic, and we've got sales value. We really want to predict how many sales or what the sales value we would expect to achieve based upon things like our advertising budget and the number of agents we have available. So we build a model that predicts that outcome. and it's reasonably accurate. It's about 70% accurate. We don't need to worry about that too much now. But what happens if I actually simulate this data to perform some what-if analysis? If I run that, it creates a copy of the same data that we saw earlier on, but this time it's simulated. So we hit preview. Here's our simulated data of advertising, consumer confidence index, etc., etc. Each row represents a sort of virtual store, if you like. And what we can then do is we can score that simulated data using our model that we built earlier on. So it will actually estimate, how many sales we would expect to make. But what we really want to do is we want to play around with 3 different advertising budget values and see what the effect is on our estimated sales if we use different advertising budgets. So to do so, if I go back into this SimGen source node here, I can go into the distribution here and say, okay, well, I don't want to use the simulated fit distribution. I want to use a set of fixed parameters. So I go in here and say fixed parameters, and I'm going to give it 3 different values. I'm going to give it a value of 60,000, a value of 70,000, and a value of 80,000. And if I do that, click OK, then I've got this fixed value here. I can go into advanced options, and I can create a little iteration field called advertising budget. Click OK and connect that up to my simulation evaluation. Here it is. It's going to use advertising budget. It's going to look at the estimated sales, and if I hit run at that point, it then scores the data, the simulated data, if you like, and it shows me what range of values I can expect to get from my 3 different advertising budgets of 60,000, 70,000, and 80,000 respectively. So I can slide these up and down. If I use this bar here, and let's go for about the median value here. Let's go around about the center of this distribution here, and I can say that, well, I've got let's see, I've got a 34% chance of getting more than $7.6 million using the first advertising budget, but 42% chance of achieving it in the second advertising budget, and nearly 51% chance of achieving it using the third advertising budget. So this ability to play around with these 3 different scenarios that we've created here and see what the effect is of sales is really driven by the fact that we can simulate the data and we can pass through different parameter values to perform what-if analysis. It's one of the things that makes simulation so powerful.